Hey heroes, welcome back to Extended Edition here, whether you're listening on Patreon or Apple Premium. We certainly appreciate your support. Here we are back with chapter 48, which we will cover sort of again on the chapter, but we want to kind of slow down and do, I guess, more of an in-depth study here. And I guess you're also kind of getting a little bit of next episode early, which is pretty cool too. So chapter 48 is leave taking. So Nynaeve is in her wagon packing her belongings after changing from her circus costume into a plain gray woolen dress. She packs the twisted stone ring, Lan's signet ring, her gold serpent ring, the gems Amathera gave to her, some pouches of herbs and a small mortar and pestle to prepare them, and finally the letters of rights in 3 of the 6 purses. She also takes one of the letters that authorizes the bearer to do whatever she wishes in the name of the Amerlin. She decides to leave the Adam and the box containing the other dream world's ter'angreal to Elaine. She also packs most of her clothes, but regrets having to leave some behind. She uses Luca's red dress to pack the Dark One's seal. She can't bring herself to touch it because of the evil feeling coming from it. I mean, that's the Dark One's seal, man. It's like,
Yeah, it's pretty
it's a big deal.
right.
You know, Elaine comes in looking very upset. She packs the Adam, Brigette's silver arrow, the other 2 Dreamworld ter'angreal, which is the sleeping woman plaque and the iron disc, and the rest of the money. Elaine also manages to pack all of her clothes and belongings, leaving almost nothing behind. The tension is at an all-time high between Elaine and Nynaeve. Outside, the men have already packed everything and they're ready to go. Brigitte is also outside as well. The people from the circus come to wish them all goodbye. Some offer to escort them off to the city, but they're relieved when their offer is denied. Luca gives Nynaeve flowers and professes his undying love, embarrassing her and making her furious at both him and Lan. The group head out for Samara with Galad leading, flanked by Tom and Julian and the Shinarans in a long file to either side. The women walk in the middle. The men are all very nervous and keep fiddling with their weapons. However, the walk to the town is uneventful. When they reach Samara, they are greeted by the sight of burning houses, corpses hanging from various places, and bodies on the ground. The only sounds are glass shards breaking under their feet and the buzz of the fairway mobs. The group runs into one of the mobs and has to fight their way to the docks. The men manage to hold off the mob, but Galad, it is Galad who finally breaks through them. Tom, Julian, and most of the Shinarans are wounded. Galad is untouched. When they reach the docks, Galad speaks to the White Cloaks and they let the group in. A small crowd is huddled near the docks under White Cloaks guards, nearly a dozen men, old, ragged, and bruised, and twice as many women, most with children and babies. The sight wrenches Nynaeve's heart. As she makes the captain, Neris, agree to take them on the ship as well. Galad tells Nynaeve and Elaine that he only paid for half the travel costs because Captain Neris overcharged the traveling fee and he doesn't have enough money to pay for the whole trip. Nynaeve thanks Galad for his efforts, and she still can't understand how he could have started a war in Samara just to keep a promise. Galad tells Nynaeve and Elaine to stay away from Rand. Nynaeve wonders if Galad suspects that they have no intention of going to Camelin, but then dismisses the idea.
Yeah, so while Matt's gathering his thoughts on that chapter, let me just read you guys quickly some stuff about Samara and just where we're at as a refresher. So Samara it's a small town in Gillidan, and if you go back to the first book, we remember Gillidan because of Logain and where he's at. We saw those cool images coming out about the show, and it's situated on the river Eldar. It is basically riot town right now. It's not good. You've got the Prophet there. You've got the White Cloaks are there, and the reason they're there, we're talking about this now. Gillidan it's a relatively small country that lies along the feet of the Mountains of Mist. So you think about where Rand, the 2 rivers, kind of borders I think it's the east side of the Mountains of Mist. This is at the southern end of that, so it's a small country there. Yeah, it's at the feet of the Mountains of Mist. Yeah, and it's to the north of Amadisia and northwest of Altara. The current sign of Gillidan is that of they've got like a red field with 3 stars, so just some extra stuff there. But it's just interesting as to where it's positioned, and you can see why Amadecia, when you look at it on a map, the headquarters for the White Cloaks is just south of it. And it's in a really interesting region where a lot of people have to cross through. If you want to go around the Mountains of Mist, you want to go south. If you are east of that and you want to go south and around it, you have to kind of go through Gillidan. So a lot of people, a lot of traffic, and that's really where we're at. Also, I wanted to mention that Valen Luca, when I think about him in the show, or I think about just that character in general, he's more just comic relief, right? He's embarrassing Nynaeve. He's probably like, falling, tripping over himself just to get in front of her and talk to her. And he's also very full of himself and just a showman. He's just a big time entertainer. And I think he could even be funnier in the show.
And I think the point is to sort of make him the complete total opposite of Lan, right?
Yeah.
And then it's almost like, oh my God, here's some guy who's, trying to marry me, but obviously he's nothing close to Lan,
right.
Dragon. So I mean, yeah. And so I think that's sort of the point too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So,
well,
go ahead.
Oh, okay. But I was gonna say, just quick thoughts on this chapter here. Man, when they're packing, it's like, look at all the stuff they've got, that is all these like crazy powerful objects they've accumulated along the way. I guess you really sort of forget it until you sort of see, oh, we got this thing, and this thing, and this thing, and this. I mean, we got Brigette's silver bow, we've got a Dark One seal, we've got Nadam, we've got Terran Grial. I mean, we've got a lot of powerful objects here.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. They've been on a quest to hunt down the Black Aja from the get-go, and they're acquiring stuff along the way. That is one thing I like about the Wheel of Time, is that you have objects of power. It makes you think of like a video game or this great quest where there's more than just one. It's not just one ring. It's other things. It's rings that take you to Dreamworld. It's power swords. It's Tir Grial, Saw Grial. There's like a level to the Grial, which is really interesting. Some of the Grial, you don't even need to use the power. Like a Tir Grial, anyone can use it. Saw Grial just magnifies the channeler, and they have Grial. And then now, like, that was one of the big things when they were back in the Panarch's palace. They were, and she's fighting Mogideon for the first time. Nynaeve figures out what the Black Aja is after. They're after that Adam, which is something that you could use to kind of capture a male channeler, and you could bend him to your will. They're also, they got the seal, one of the Dark One seals, which is freaking huge. I mean, what the heck is that thing doing there? I mean, why is that not at the White Tower? Why are not all of those collected? They've lost track of them over the years, and they've been shipped around to different leaders. It's crazy.
It is, and it's just so. I guess that's just something I think is sort of important to take away, because we just don't think about it as often. But because sometimes, as we see these people traveling all over the place, I mean, this is one of these things where all these things will come back at some point to play a role and have a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. They are. Yeah, they do have a purpose, and I can't talk about any of it. But
I'm sure, and that's fine.
Which is cool. Which is cool, and that's why we like to do the recaps and we like to do the extended edition is to dive into more of these. I actually think once I let Matt go to the dream world, I'm probably gonna just keep the mic on here. I'm gonna hit record right away and just go into a thought that I have on Samael and the seals, and maybe go over where all the seals are and stuff like that, because that's stuff that just you lose track of, and I'm just kind of lost on it, and I don't even know. We were debating whether to do the Samael like recap or to just go into this chapter, because I couldn't actually remember whether he was like Samael's arc, some of the stuff on the wiki had been named or not, because the way they arrange it is they bring in stuff that is revealed later, but they tell it to you in the intro on who he is. And you're like, what the heck? So can't use any of that, and I don't have the time to go back and research every line where Samael was mentioned and whether they dropped particular names or references to other characters and stuff like that. So we'll do that here in spoiler in just a little bit. But man, you're right. They've acquired all these objects of power, and they're going to matter. They have to keep them. That also makes them a target for the Black Aja and for the Forsaken, though, if they have these things. Like, right, it's Mogideon now has just a personal grudge with Nynaeve,
Right.
and that's a situation to deal with. But also they could be targeted because of what they have in their possession, which is why it was very dangerous that they were next to the Prophet. Actually, like if more had been revealed, like Nynaeve was cautious around the Prophet earlier, just to make sure that her affiliation with the dragon and what they were doing and stuff like that wasn't super well known, or that he didn't see her as something that he could acquire and use with him to amplify his message or his voice. So that's wild. At the end of this too, money becomes an issue. So they had to pay Luca, and they wanted to pay him that money. They also need to, like, they're taking in some of these Shinarans who are going with them, who are acting as their personal bodyguards, working them through Samara and the riding crowds. When they get to the ship, they have to pay additional money because that captain is like, I'm not gonna, it's gonna cost me more to go through all this and damage to the ship and whatnot, and also just knows the situation and how dire it is, and so he charges them more. Galad only had a certain amount of money, gets them on the ship, so that will become an issue. How do you pay for that? How do you feed the men that are around you and take care of them? Because they're now looking to Nynaeve to basically be that person,
The leader, right?
yeah. And Elaine has somewhat knows the experience, or knows that, like, when people rely on you as a king or a queen or a ruler in some capacity, she sort of gets that. Nynaeve has normally just been there to give advice and counsel, and is not necessarily responsible for whether or not your crops grow, although they will say, the wisdom needs to check into the weather and figure out what the heck's going on with the weather and why our crops aren't growing. She didn't have that real direct responsibility for, like, feeding the poor and the hungry and taking care of everyone in that capacity, I guess, or not on that scale that it seems like she's in right now with these individuals in Samara. So that's all the kind of stuff that she's dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, thank you so much for supporting us here on either Patreon or Apple Premium. As I said, it's enormous help to us. So we certainly appreciate it. Stay tuned. We will be back. Ez is almost back from Germany, so there's going to be a lot more content coming your guys' way once we're on a 3-hour time zone shift as opposed to a 9-hour time zone shift. So stay tuned for that. So, all right, guys, with that, we want to thank you, and remember that the grave is no bar to our call.